nursing staff literally told me, "You're one of the lucky ones because you don't need hospitalization." And that was all during the time that guys were literally falling out and being rushed off the premises to medical.
29 people have died from COVID-19 at San Quentin Prison, leaving the biggest death toll of any prison in California. To break down the experiences of those behind bars during this pandemic, we now welcome in the founders of the Prison Journalism Project, Yukari, Kane, and Shaheen Pasha. Good to see both of you. Thanks for joining us. You two started the Prison Journalism Project partly in response to the beginning of the pandemic. You've now been publishing stories for almost a year now surrounding COVID-19. What stories or conversations stick out to you from throughout the pandemic?
We've been getting stories from across the country, and the points that the writers are making are really unfortunately very similar. It's about their lack of ability to social distance. It's about the lack of products like soap. It's about guards and people coming in from the outside who aren't masking properly, and or the lack of masks for themselves.
Once the first cases started coming up, I mean, it was just like, it just was overnight. It was from night to day.
And San Quentin's massive outbreak last summer was sparked by almost 200 inmates being transferred from a prison in Southern California. The state watchdog Cal OSHA came out with a report that found prison officials ignored warnings that led to a public health disaster, their words. Can you take me back to that stretch of time? Were you speaking with any of the incarcerated inmates or writers at San Quentin, and how were they feeling at the time?
I mean, I could start with San Quentin. It was very scary because there wasn't a lot of information coming out. I was communicating via letters, phone calls when they could make them. But letters, so there'd be a 2-week lag time. And, it started out saying, I'm okay. I'm feeling healthy. And then I would get letters saying, I'm feeling okay. I can't taste anything, but I'm sure I'll be fine. And then nothing for a few weeks. And so it was very scary. I mean, Shaheen, what about you?
Yeah, I think across the board from the prisons that we've been hearing from, there's just this sense of not knowing what is happening, not knowing what kind of testing is being done. If someone in your tier has tested positive, are they going to move you? If they're going to move you, the only place that incarcerated people, get moved to quarantine is solitary. And I really want to strike that home. Solitary is a punishment. It is a horrible place that nobody wants to go to. And especially when you're feeling sick and you're very ill, to be moved to solitary is an additional punishment.
Prison's already bad enough, and then to just get thrown in some empty cell with none of the creature comforts we're used to, which isn't really much compared to the outside world, but it's pretty much all we have. A TV, a radio, a hot pot, just being pulled away from all that and just thrown somewhere, and you're sick. So you're in the worst physical condition, and you're in the worst mental health environment.
For many people inside, it incentivized them to not say anything. Mm-hmm. Feeling well. And I think that actually has made it even worse, because when you create a system that punishes you for being sick, and mind you, a lot of the people that are getting sick are having it brought in from the outside in, for them to be punished for that, it just creates a storm inside. And I think that for many of our writers, men and women inside, the feeling was that we don't know what's happening, and we are just being additionally punished for being sick.
And San Quentin was ordered to reduce its prison population by 50% last fall, but mass incarceration played a big role in how much the virus spread. You touched on this a bit, but can you describe the connection between mass incarceration and how COVID-19 spreads?
Yeah, I mean, our writer Joe Garcia has been chronicling COVID-19 since and inside San Quentin since the very beginning, and he, with regard to prisoners being released or moved out of San Quentin, it's a complicated thing because not everybody is getting released, and being transferred out of San Quentin also means a loss of access to their programs when the pandemic returns. So it's It's a very complicated thing, and I think the uncertainty is the scariest thing of all, and the lack of communications. Right now, Joe's latest piece was about how the vaccine rollout is going inside, and we talk about once a week, and there are some men getting their second doses, but he's not on the list yet for the first dose.
And I want to also just emphasize that prison itself, just by the way it's been designed, is not meant to handle an outbreak. There is no humanly possible way in there to socially distance. There is no way that you can mask, because there are all sorts of restrictions on the types of things that you can wear on your body, what is acceptable, what is not. Hand sanitizers are something that in many prisons are not allowed. I mean, they were allowed among the staff, but they're not allowed among the incarcerated population. So if you look at the actual makeup of prisons, of course it's going to spread. I mean, there's no humanly possible way that it didn't spread the way it did. So I think that we have to also look at how prisons have been set up to kind of examine what went wrong. And a lot did go wrong during this pandemic when it comes to how COVID spread among the incarcerated population.
San Quentin and a lot of prisons throughout the system have these really tiny cells that were originally architected for one person to live in, one prisoner to be housed in. But over the years, because of mass incarceration and overcrowding, they adjusted and actually just added another bunk bed into those cells, and all of a sudden it's double occupancy. And this happened all up and down the state, not just at San Quentin. The original single-man cell was pretty damn small, and then to just all of a sudden make that a two-person cell, just added to the whole aspect how dangerous it is here now with COVID.
Part of the reality, the new reality for them as well, is that they are not getting outside of their cells. And so we're getting some reports in states where they're only able to shower, once every couple of weeks. They can't clean themselves. They don't, in addition to not having soap. And so there's that cabin fever as well. That's a factor really weighing on their psychology.
On January 20th, they officially started vaccinating San Quentin prisoners, but it's a super slow rollout. My understanding is all they've vaccinated so far is people over 65, anybody that has those high-risk underlying conditions. And when I say vaccinated, I mean offer the vaccination, because a lot of guys choose not to take it.
And of course, vaccines are also a factor now all across the country. People who are incarcerated are now being given the COVID-19 vaccine. Over 30,000 in California in the prison system have been given their first dose. Is the vaccine being looked at as a way to get back to their own sense of normalcy?
I think there's a lot of hope that things will get back to normal soon. But on the other hand, they're very worried that the pandemic has changed the norm permanently. And so there's a lot of concern about whether they're going to get back the programs that they'll have access to, whether they'll be able to get back the recreational time and the time outside of their cells in the way that they used to. And so there's a lot of trepidation about how the norm is going to change.
And visitation. I mean, that's one of the main things that we are hearing across the board. People miss their families, they miss their loved ones. In some prisons, you have the ability to do a video visit, but there are fears now that with COVID, something that's just going to be part of the environment now, potentially, it's not going to be completely eradicated, that, prison administrations may decide, okay, video visits are enough. We're not going to allow for in-person visits anymore. And that is a devastating prospect. I mean, people have not seen their families, haven't been able to hug their loved ones in a year. And I think that the vaccine is giving hope that, we can get back to normal, but there's absolutely fear that maybe the normal that we're now going to get to is new and not in any way better.
Yeah, they need those connections for sure. Shaheen Pasha and Yukari Kane, thank you both.
Thank you.